Hi everybody, in today's video it's another Christmassy video where I'm going to be making another miniature for my Tudor doll's house. So for anybody new to my channel, I have a Tudor doll's house and I've been enjoying making all of the different bits to go inside it. In my last video I made a miniature wreath to hang on the front door, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit similar and I'm going to be making a Tudor bough. So grab a cup of tea, get nice and cosy like my cat, and let's get started. So in my last video I showed you how I made some miniature leaves. I am going to be doing the same again, but I'm also going to be making some with a little sort of punching machine thing. It's not a machine, it's tiny, but I found it in a charity shop and it punches out holly leaves, and I thought that's absolutely ideal for making some miniature leaves to go onto this decoration. So I started with this watercolour paper and I just painted on some green acrylic paint until it was completely covered, and I did 2 sheets of this. Each sheet was a slightly different colour, and I added a little bit of yellow as well so that there was a mottled effect, so that it wasn't all the same shade of green. I chose this music in the background because I thought it sounded a bit Christmassy, but the more I listen to it, the more it sounds like the theme tune to the Antiques Roadshow. Do you have the Antiques Roadshow in different countries? I don't know if it's just an English thing. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. Once I'd finished painting one side of this watercolour paper, I just moved my items away so that they could dry, so that I could use my space for something else. And obviously when they were dry I also painted the back of them. So next I covered my little table with some greaseproof paper. I did this first of all so that I didn't paint my table, but secondly because I would need the greaseproof paper a little bit later on, and you will see why as we go through the video. So this little seed was from a plant which I showed you in my last video, the one where I made the wreath. I'm not sure what the plant's called, but this is a little dried seed from it, and I think it looks like a miniature apple. So I decided to just give the stalk a little trim and the leaf too, and then I tried painting it with some acrylic paint to try and make it look more like an apple. So the bough was a really popular Christmas decoration in the Tudor era. You might have heard it being called the Tudor kissing bough because it often had mistletoe on it. Mine doesn't have mistletoe on it, but I am going to put this little apple in the middle of it because it was quite popular to hang fruit in the middle. So you could use a little apple or a little pear or something like that. So that's why I'm painting this seed to look like an apple. If you would like to know more about the Tudor bough, if you go on English Heritage's website, I found a really good video where it shows you how to make a full-sized one, and it's got lots of information about the symbolism of the plants that we used and why it was a popular decoration. I did find that the acrylic paint wasn't adhering very well to the seed, so I decided to leave it at this point to dry and come back to it later. Whilst it was drying, I got on with a little bit of my Christmas wrapping. We're about a week away from Christmas Day, so it's time to make sure that I get some of those jobs done, as well as making miniatures for my doll's house. Please don't look at this terrible wrapping. I completely misjudged the size of the present. Sorry, Mum and Dad. So when my paper was dry, it was time to start using this little punch to punch out the holly leaf shapes. So I found this punch in a charity shop. It was a Dove House charity shop that's got a craft section. It was about £1.50, £1.75 maybe. And would you believe I actually went into the charity shop hoping that they might have a punch that punched out holly leaves, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it sat there, because what are the chances that somebody would have donated this and I would have gone in at just the right time to find it when I really wanted one. It was actually quite hard to use the punch to cut out of the thick watercolour paper, so I treated myself to a little hot chocolate and then got going again. So in my little video to make the wreath, I made my own leaves by painting onto greaseproof paper, and this technique worked really well. I did think that this punch would save me some time so that I could make some leaves in bulk and then embellish with my hand painted leaves. As it happens, it was so hard to cut through this card that actually I think it might have been quicker to just paint the greaseproof paper leaves. So basically, if you have your own punch like this, I would recommend using thinner paper. And if you don't have a punch like this, don't worry at all. Take a look back at my video on how to make the little wreath. And it shows you how I make my own leaves that I actually think do look better than these ones. But I carried on punching out these leaves because I did want quite a lot of them. My cat enjoyed watching, of course, as always. Some of the leaves did stick together, and I tried to peel them apart, but unfortunately the green side stuck together and then tore away, leaving some white. So I sorted the leaves so that I had these ones that hadn't stuck together, and then I also started to peel away some of my little acrylic leaves from my wreath video. So these leaves are just made from acrylic paint mixed with a little bit of PVA glue and painted onto greaseproof paper. They peel away really easily and they look fantastic as little leaves. It means you can vary the shape, the size, the colour, and they are really nice and thin but still quite strong. So now it was time to start putting everything together. So I laid my little miniature apple down. It's not the right colour yet, so I am going to add a little bit more colour to it a little bit later on. But I just used some Yoo-Hoo glue and put a ring around the apple. I did this around the apple so that I knew that the ring would be the right size. And I put the glue onto the greaseproof paper that I had initially put down on my little table. And then I used the punched out leaves as the first layer for my Tudor bough. I used the punched leaves rather than the ones that I'd hand painted because I had more of them. So I thought this would make a really nice base before putting on my hand painted bespoke leaves. So I repositioned them to make sure they're in the position that I wanted using some tweezers, and then added another ring of glue over the top. And then I gently placed all of my little handmade leaves over the top, making sure that they weren't all laid flat to make sure that this was really nice and 3D. I then made a second ring that was the same shape and size, because this is going to fit to the back of the first ring. When I peel these rings away when they're dry, they're going to have a flat back, so it will be the two flat backs that will go together so that the leaves will stick out on either side. Tudor bough is very much like two wreaths fitted together so that they make a sphere. So I need 2 more rings to make another wreath, but this time I'm doing them in half, or I should say quarters maybe, so 4 quarters, so that I can fit them together into a sphere shape when they are dry. It took a lot of leaves, which is why I decided to use the punch rather than painting my own. But actually, if I had a little bit more time, I do think I would just use hand-painted leaves. So if you're going to have a go at this yourself, I would just use hand-painted rather than punched leaves. The punched leaves have a little white edge on them, so when I punch them out, obviously the very, very side of them, you can see the depth of the white card. I could give them another bit of paint, but this would be very, very fiddly, and actually I think once my handmade leaves are stuck over the top, you can't see that white so much. I had also painted some tiny little red dots using the acrylic paint and the glue that I'd done in the previous wreath video, and I hadn't used these, but actually I decided to use them now to add some little berries to this Tudor bough. If I had some polymer clay berries left, I would have used those. I decided not to make some new polymer clay berries because I didn't need many, and I actually wanted to save on gas and electric and not switch my oven on just to do some tiny little polymer clay berries. So I decided to paint my apple red. By this point it was getting dark, so apologies for the change in lighting. I decided to paint my little apple red so that it stood out, hanging in the green leaves, and then I just threaded a needle and gently pushed it up through the apple. There was a little knot in the end of my cotton so that it didn't go all the way through the apple, and then I laid the apple in the middle of my solid ring with the thread going up and over the ring of leaves. I put glue on the flat side and then stuck the flat side of the second ring down to it. And then I gently teased the leaves upwards so that they weren't lying so flat. The colours don't look quite right in this video. If it was daylight, you would see that the greens were a little bit more vibrant and the red too, but obviously I was filming at night here, so the green almost looks black. So I stuck 2 of the quarters together to make a half, and then the other 2 quarters together to make the second half, and then I glued these onto the full wreath like this. I did 1 half and then stuck some leaves around where the glue join was, and then when that was dry I flipped it over and stuck the other half on. This made the sphere shape. You'll notice that by sticking the 2 rings together, the first 2, it trapped the cotton in place. I have actually still got the cotton attached to the needle at this point. When it was all dry, I made sure that all of those leaves were prised out so that it was really nice and 3D and not flat. And then I took it to my doll's house to hang it up. To hang it, I'd actually left the needle attached to the thread, and I simply popped it onto the magnet that holds the door in place, so the full wall of the front of the doll's house comes open, so the magnet holds it in place, and I just thought, well, it's not a permanent addition, it'll be coming down at the end of Christmas, so I may as well hang it like that. So that was my Tudor bough complete. Please let me know what you think of how the doll's house is looking. I think it looks really beautiful at night time. I'd maybe make my Tudor bough a little bit bigger now that I've seen it hung in place. Let me know if you make one yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.